Bitcoin has come back with a vengeance, surging to 65K, and new all-time highs are in sight. Not to mention, Bitcoin has just made history again. Bitcoin whales are accumulating more Bitcoin than ever before. The grayscale bleed? Well, that's over. It's flipped green, and nobody is ready for what's coming. We have some data surrounding Berkshire Hathaway, and that data says the money printer is coming back with a vengeance. What does that mean for Bitcoin's price? Well, stay until the finish, because Max Keiser believes the perfect storm for Bitcoin to 300x? Well, we're in it.
Party, that party. Come and have a good time with G.O.D.
Hey, we kind of touched on this at the end of last week, but there were signs that Bitcoin was reversing, and now here we are. And some believe that Bitcoin is headed to 83.5K before July, and if you think about it, that is not wild. Actually, that's very bearish. It really depends on how fast Bitcoin reaches this next all-time high, which would be 73, 74K. But once it does, based on past history, Bitcoin has been known to double in price just weeks and months after flipping the all-time high to support, so be ready for that. Now, this is some massive news. Bitcoin hits a billion transaction milestone and 10 years faster than Visa. According to Clark Moody's Bitcoin data, the milestone was reached on Sunday, May 5th. The event comes when Bitcoin's price shows signs of stabilization, hovering around 64K. And then Jack, always so concise, 1 billion transaction. Go check it out on Clark Moody. Time chain stats, also a good place to go. You know how long it took Visa? 25 years. Think about that. Bitcoin's not done. It keeps dropping dimes like Kendrick right now. Bitcoin Network sets record with over 1.6 million transactions in a single day. Probably nothing. So if we go back to 2009, since Bitcoin came into existence, over $100 trillion of value has been settled on the Bitcoin network. There is no second best. Now, you may not know this, but Bitcoin has actually hit a new all-time high, as the 200-day moving average price has now surpassed 50K for the first time ever. And we can see when we start to flip from this kind of purple to blue, things get spicy. So Bitcoin, the network, is just going bananas right now. Every metric and statistic, Bitcoin is just absolutely killing it. And then let's go ahead and take a look at this chart, because we have whales accumulating at a pace that has never been seen. And go ahead and look in the past. If we look at these other cycles, these big peaks in whale accumulation, and then what follows in price. But now, for us to be where we are in price with record-setting accumulation, do you know what that means? I'll tell you what it means. Bull market's fucking back, and the sellers are getting exhausted. New news here. Grayscale Bitcoin Trust records their first inflows on May 5th after 17.5 billion in outflows. Things are flipping green. It's kind of going that way across the board. Strap in. Let's take a look back here. Bitcoin has soared over 12,464% in a decade, obviously outshining Amazon, Google, and whatever. So what's next for Bitcoin? Well, you might want to get your stapler guns out, because according to Greg Foss, when Bitcoin goes gamma, it will rip your face off.
Bitcoin is the perfect option that I've ever seen in my life. It's got no theta, meaning it has no expiry time. It actually increases in value as volatility increases. It's got gamma, which is your second derivative, which means more people will run to own it. And as more people run to own it, it actually builds on itself. It's called a gamma squeeze. And think of a gamma squeeze on the Fed put. Everybody trusts the Fed to be there to bail out markets. But imagine the one time the Fed can't bail out the market. Well, basically, what has the Fed done? With a Fed put, the Fed has sold volatility to the markets. The market is long the Fed put. A gamma squeeze is when you have to run out, and the Fed has to run out and cover the stuff they shorted. Imagine if they run out and buy Bitcoin. Imagine the smartest trade they could ever make. And by the way, people are learning this day by day. This doesn't come quickly, but I believe I've seen inklings of when markets and VIX starts picking up, the price of Bitcoin doesn't go down. It actually picks up as well. It'll take time. It's an education process, but it starts with a credit perspective, because I've lived credit. And when you are long credit, you're short vol. And when you're short credit, you're long volatility. And what is Bitcoin? It's a short credit trade against sovereign debt.
Shout outs to you, Greg. You're a legend. But now let's get to this, guys. Warren Buffett is telling us something. We can see Berkshire Hathaway their behavior. Take a look at this. So Buffett's currently hoarding $188 billion in cash and short-term T-bills, and they're collecting a 5.4% rate. And we can see that every time Buffett has hoarded a record amount of cash, when the Fed has raised rates, an epic crash happens within the next 12 months, like it did in 2000, 2008, 2020, and now. And see, even Hanky knows that Buffett knows. Okay, but really what I want you to look at in that chart is the contraction of cycles. 2000, 2008, and those gaps, the amount of QE that had to come into the market has had to increase exponentially every time. And then its band-aid, its effect, its duration, its little high in the market, well, it doesn't last so long. As you can see, we're only 4 years apart now. And the next one will make the last stimulus look like chump change. You know, it's kind of simple when it comes to Bitcoin. The total fiat money printed by central banks, and if you divide that by, well, 21 million Bitcoin, that'll give you an idea of where things are headed. And we covered this. Bitcoin jumped following the USD Bank of Japan intervention last week. Money printers go burr, Bitcoin go up. We know the M2 money supply is growing. Basically, J Powell is there in the bullpen. He's getting warmed up. They're about to call in Wild Thing, and he's about to bring straight gas to that money printer. When the money printers go burr, you want to make sure that your Bitcoin is in self-custody so you don't get 6102'd by the state. What will all this money printing do to Bitcoin's price? Before the legend Max Keiser breaks it down, let's take a minute to recognize our sponsors, the Bitcoin Way. Simply Bitcoin Originals are powered by the Bitcoin Way. They bring over 25 years of cybersecurity experience. They are your IT team in the Bitcoin world. They help bridge that gap from the why Bitcoin to the how Bitcoin. And as your dedicated Bitcoin IT team, the Bitcoin Way is here to guide you from start to finish on your journey to properly self-custody your Bitcoin. From your first wallet node to advanced multi-sig security, inheritance planning, and much more, the Bitcoin Way has got you covered, and they will hold your hand and walk you through the process toward becoming a sovereign individual. And if you're looking to get started, you can schedule a free 30-minute consultation using that link below. All right, history doesn't always repeat, but it does rhyme. And where we are, this is about that moment in Bitcoin post-halving where the 6 to 12 months of parabolic movement are really upon us. And as we talked before, now the game has changed. We have nation state sovereign wealth funds, pensions, the biggest players in the world are now here. Where could this perfect storm send Bitcoin? I don't think anyone's ready for it. Lay it on 'em, Max.
So that's the thing about Bitcoin. It is just the best money because all value is subjective, and the new generation sees it as the best money. So it is.
Right. The millennials are the biggest generation ever. They see it as money. Therefore, it is money. Oh, and by the way, it is unconfiscatable, uncensorable, and no government can stop it. Wow. Okay. Then I guess it's going a lot higher because it has to replace gold. It has to replace the US dollar. The total addressable market, TAM, for Bitcoin is $300 trillion. It's now at 1 trillion. It's got a 300x path to go from here. Own it or,
Have fun staying poor.
Have fun staying poor.
Let's go ahead and run this down. Bitcoin's chilling at 65K. Grayscale just flipped green. M2 money supply turned positive. J Powell's in the bullpen, warming up the money printers. Historic accumulation is happening. And if you missed it, nation states, sovereign wealth funds, pensions, they're all about to ape into Bitcoin. Oh yeah, and the Fed rate cuts, they're still coming. It's game the f on. I'll catch you all tomorrow. Peace.
If you prefer to go down with the ship, fuck you.